Hello folks, welcome to Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. Thought I'd give you an update and just let you know what's going on around my garden because I haven't been posting many videos. Well, it happens to be that time of the gardening season here in Zone 9 on the Texas coast where there's just not a lot going on in the garden, and really I've only got a few more days, about a week before my target for starting my fall garden, getting plants in the ground, getting seeds in the ground. Well, I'm behind, and I'm about 2 weeks behind. I started my seeds and trays, but they're not going to be ready in time to put out. So I've just been slowly de-weeding the garden and trying to make some headway. But weather, we've got rainy conditions coming out today. Weather and life, you know, things happen. So haven't been able to get a lot done. Let me show you what's going on. Like I said, we've had a ton of rain over the past several weeks, and we've had in between the rain, we've had long sections of no rain whatsoever, and I've been having to water my garden here and there, and then all of a sudden, boom, we get too much rain. So it's just one of those times where the garden's stressed out. The weeds have gone absolutely crazy, and they always do this time of year. It's very discouraging, but that's life.
Well, that's what happens in life.
When your garden experiences stress, it's the cultivars of plants that we want to eat that experience most of the stress because they're weaklings, right? They're cultivars that have been developed to give us good food, and they're not necessarily the most vigorous plants. It's all these weeds down in here, and like this morning glory vine choking out my okra. It's all these weeds that they don't mind the stress. They thrive on that. That's why they're weeds, and that's why they grow so well. The summer in my zone is very stressful in the garden, extremely stressful. In fact, that's why we get this jungle of weeds every single year. Doesn't matter what you do to try to head off all these weeds, you still get them. And add to it seasons of drought, and your cultivated plants get knocked back, and then you get, you know, torrential downpours, tropical storms, and days of rain, and the weeds pop back quicker than all your good plants, you know, respond. So that's a struggle. That's the real struggle in the summertime. Now, most gardeners hate weeds, and usually for good reason, but we usually give weeds far too much credit for robbing our soil of nutrition. Our plants can still grow in the midst of weeds, usually. There are two risks that we have to look out for. Number one is when the weeds get so tall that they start to shade out and choke out your plants, or if you have vining weeds like I do, the morning glories, they can choke out your plants that way by ringing them, and well, that's a real risk. The other risk is if you let your weeds go to seed, and you see these flowers and stuff, like right here, that's morning glory. That's morning glory seed pods, and they will reseed themselves. I hate morning glory, so I try to get the morning glory out before it goes to seed, but that's usually the biggest risk with weeds. There, you can see my eggplant, my peppers, all these beans in here, they grow in the midst of the weeds. The weeds are not really robbing that much nutrition from your plant. So that's a good thing, at least. There's some encouragement in the midst of this ugly jungle. Isn't that right, Phoebe?
It's raining, let's go in, come on.
So the weeds have really taken over the garden, and I'm slowly having to pull those weeds out along with any crops that need to be removed to make room for my fall garden. So all that okra over there, I'm letting some of those pods get real big. I'm gonna let them dry out and get some seed from them, if I can get them dried out within 2 weeks. Otherwise, they're just coming out and going to compost. My sweet potatoes have not started to form tubers yet. I dug around some test holes here and there, and so far I haven't got any sweet potatoes there. That throws a monkey wrench in my plans. I need that space. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Sweet potatoes are a good crop. I may just leave them there until they form tubers. Try to dig down in here, and I've done so a few times. I can't find any tubers down in that soil. So these sweet potatoes are not putting on yet. You still see their sweet potato flowers, and that means they're not quite ready to sock down all the starches into the tubers. They're still flowering, and you don't see any of the leaves turning yellow, which is a sign that they're ready to drop their foliage and And that's a sign that you've got sweet potatoes down there. So yeah, all these sweet potatoes still flowering. There is a tuber, and it feels pretty large, but not as large as it needs to be. All right, so I've got some tubers. That's encouraging. Yeah, the long beans, I'm currently taking them out of this middle bed, and we're gonna make that middle bed a, well, that's gonna be one of them that's gonna get flame weeded down pretty soon here. On the other side, my peppers over here, they're still putting on. My Tabasco peppers, gonna let them put on some more, another harvest. Everything in that bed's coming out too. So this is the state of the garden. Yeah, it's not looking real great, is it? I've come through here and taken out all of the massive weeds that we had, and I began working on this bed as well. Those were all yard-long beans in there. Yeah, I came through here and started pulling weeds, and well, there's what I got. And that's after a day or two of it settling down. And there's much more on the other side of the yard. So yeah, by the way, here's what happens when you leave some small plants in a pot and the roots grow out through the bottom. They just go ahead and grow anyway. And so these pepper plants have grown here in those pots, but their roots are down in the ground. Tropical storm blew them over, so well, they're still growing. I'm going to make one last harvest of my Tabasco peppers off of these two plants, and we're going to pull these out as well. We've got to plant our cabbages, our radishes, our daikon radishes, our carrots, all our root crops, cauliflower. All that needs to go in. Should be going in right about now or within a week. That was my plan. But the good thing about living on the Texas coast in Zone 9A is I can put those things in late. They're just going to go straight through the winter, and the winter's not going to kill them unless we get an epic freeze like we did this last winter. So yeah, that's the status of the garden. Things are kind of out of whack right now. I'm not real motivated. When the summer heat is out, you know, it's hard to get out here and pull weeds with the heat and the mosquitoes. The mosquitoes have been bloodthirsty lately. You can see what a weedy mess it is down in here, and this is after I've pulled out the big weeds. I've got Bermuda grass up in here, and it's these little things that are driving me crazy. These get real big. Pull those out, and you can see I've got a pile of weeds there that have come out of here. But in pulling the weeds, I found, you know, eggplants, and you know, that's good. It's always nice to have some summer harvest. Got another one coming on there, and there's several hidden around here. The eggplants thrive in the summer heat, and even with the weeds, they did not stop. You can see they've grown into a gnarled mess. That's why we plant eggplants. Pepper plants are still putting on strong, and even in the weeds, they do fine. Hidden back in there, there's a bell pepper. Yeah, weeds were way up to here. So you can see some of the morning glory that I snapped at the ground is starting to die off. But even amidst the choking weeds, we get eggplant. We get peppers. I did get my little side herb garden cleared out. I'm going to top that off and put a little more soil in there, and we're going to plant things in there, probably some garlic. So yeah, that bed's the way I want them all to look. This one was easy. Yeah, I think it's time to get started in earnest and get some videos going again. I also want to show you my apple trees. This apple tree is almost as tall as me. It's what we call a whip, and this is what we won in our first year. My apple trees have been a success, and I'm really glad. This is the tallest one. The others are a little bit shorter, and I've got one over here that's about half this size because I had to start him later. He was a replacement. What we're going to do once these get up is next year I'll show you how to prune them to start forcing out branching. So yeah, all the grafts took. They're doing well. I haven't fertilized them. According to Cuffle Creek Nursery, not supposed to fertilize them. Let them learn to live in the soil that they're in. And well, that's what I've done. There happen to be ladybugs on my apple trees, several of them, and that's because I've got some aphids down here. And so this is nature taking care of itself. Ladybugs are ferocious predators and will take care of these aphids for me. But yeah, I've got aphids. I'm gonna probably come out and spray some neem oil on here. That is a very historical aircraft. That's a Martin WB-57F, flown by NASA, one of only 2 or 3 that are still flying, and it's used by NASA for high altitude research. My other small wooden raised bed is still growing rosemary, some onions, some thyme. There's some sage over there that suffered from the drought, but it'll perk back up after this rain we've had today. And I've got some bok choy coming up right there from seed that dropped this spring. That's a bonus. Be able to pull that out and throw it in a soup or something. And back here I've got some herbs too. I don't remember what that is. What is that? That's oregano. All right. Pull those out. Dry them. That's encouraging. So the garden could be discouraging for me right now if I let it get in my head. But this is just the way it goes in the summertime when the weeds just take over. And that's why we grow summer crops that can handle the weeds. But yeah, I still am behind, so I just wanted to give you a little update why there's not been that many videos. I'm still gardening. We're still going to do our fall garden. It's just being pushed back a little bit by circumstances. And that's what happens when you garden. Sometimes the weather doesn't cooperate. Sometimes you get a freeze. Sometimes you get a drought. And you have to adjust and shift your plans a bit. So that's what we're doing. We're shifting our plans, pushing them out 2 weeks. And I will continue to work on this garden, especially when the cool weather comes, and flame weed the whole thing down and get those ashes worked into the soil. We'll work the soil a little bit and amend it just a little bit, and we'll start our seeds. So yeah, my least favorite part of gardening is summer. But I'm so glad you've been asking for my videos. Thank you for all of you who have asked where I am and how we're doing. We're doing great. Everything's wonderful in our family. Everything's wonderful in our church. Life is doing well. But the garden, it's the way it goes. Hey, thanks for joining me on Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.